Hello there, I hope you are well. Welcome to this video in which I'll be talking all about sensory overload, what it is and what you can do when it happens. And if you are new to me and my work, my name is Nicola. I'm a yoga teacher, a yoga therapist, and I'm also highly sensitive and neurodivergent myself. And really I'm on a mission to share content such as this, but other bits and pieces too, other therapeutic techniques and self-care tools, really to support neurodivergent people, highly sensitive people in their own personal growth and well-being. So you are very welcome to be here, and yeah, let's get into the topic itself. So sensory overload, I have lots of personal experience of this. I have two neurodivergent children as well. So yeah, I'm well versed from a personal level, but it's also something that I bring into my work as well with those that I work with. So what is sensory overload? In a nutshell, sensory overload is when our senses, so sight, sound, taste, smell, touch, etc., our sixth sense even, takes in too much information, more than our nervous systems and our brain can handle. And what actually happens is when our system is overwhelmed, we can go into like a fight or flight response, because essentially it's too much. If you think about a cup of water that's been sat under a tap for ages and it's just overflowing, it's a little bit like that. And it can be really hard for our nervous system to make sense of the information coming in. And if you are highly sensitive and neurodivergent, then your nervous system is wired to not only take in more information, detect more information, but you will also be processing it at a much more elaborate level as well. So it's really easy for someone that's highly sensitive and neurodivergent to become sensory overwhelmed, particularly in the modern world. You know, we're not living out in nature where things are a lot more pleasing to the senses. We are in our modern homes. We have lots of screens and devices. We are much more interconnected socially as well. We wear a lot of synthetic fabrics and so on. So there's just a lot more that we could be taking in. And, you know, my own experience of sensory overload is that it's really one of those key things that can lead to a meltdown moment, or just, yeah, being completely overwhelmed. And when that happens for me, or when that's happened and happens for me, because it still happens, it's so uncomfortable. It feels, to me, I feel like I want to rip my own skin off. That probably sounds extreme, but that's how it feels. I guess in that way, I could see how this could lead to self-harming behaviour, and certainly something that was true for me when I was younger. So I'd be curious in the comments to hear what it feels like for you. I can feel like my skin is crawling, like I'm itching, like any small thing is too much, because my system is full. There's no room for anything else. So what I could have tolerated before, like a particular jumper or a certain sound, is just not going to happen, and is going to just add further problem for me. So what can you do about it when you're in it? And this largely comes from personal experience of working with this and moving this through my body. Not so regular now, but it used to be a real regular thing for me. But also, you know, with the knowledge that I've gained through my training on how the nervous system works. So what you could try, and I do want to state here that not everything that I'm going to say is going to work for everyone, because we're all so wonderfully unique and our senses are wired in very different ways. So try it, see if it works, and if it doesn't, then move on to something else. The first thing, when you know that you're at that point where sensory overload is about to happen, you're about to tip over into that edge. I mean, if you can get it before it, then that's great. But it can be difficult to predict, particularly if the environment, you know, we're not able to control the environment all the time, are we? So if you know you're getting to that point, if it is possible to do so, take yourself to an environment that is lower level sensory stimulation, and or as comfortable an environment as possible. So for me, it means no people. I love your people, but not when I'm in a sensory overwhelm moment. No people. I definitely don't want to be touched by anybody. If it was always possible, it would be low lights or not complete darkness, because that in itself could be too much, but low level. It might be getting hold of those things that you feel are soothing. My son's got this gorgeous lava lamp, and that lighting would work for me, for example. It could be having textures that support you. It could be taking off clothes if you feel like there's some restriction in your clothes. I mean, this doesn't apply to everybody, but bras, I've given up on bras now. But any sort of clothing that's causing a problem, just get them off if it's appropriate. Obviously, if you're in the middle of a supermarket, it's not going to be helpful. And that environment, that low level environment, will depend on where you're at. So if you are in the supermarket, it could be getting out and going to your car. If you are at work, it could be going to the loo and just staying in there for a little bit, And if you're at home, it could be going to a room in the house where nobody's present, shutting the door, closing the curtains, and being there. The other thing that might be helpful, and this is really helpful to me, is deep pressure. For some of you, it might be a hug. It might be asking someone that really understands you and can be with you without creating extra issues, is asking for a deep pressure hug. For me, when I'm in that deep sensory overwhelm moment, it is not. But a weighted blanket is where I would turn to. Or just being under a lot of blankets. Or another thing that I do if I'm not, in the vicinity of a blanket, is holding on, giving myself a hug, or squeezing my arms, squeezing my legs, really firmly doing that. Again, that might not be for everybody, but deep pressure is really helpful for me because it reminds me that I'm in a body and that I have some control, and it's soothing to my skin as well. What else? Yes, movement. So this can be really helpful, particularly if you're feeling quite flighty with it, is some movement. So obviously, as a yoga teacher, I'm going to keep banging on about movement and body work as essential to anyone who's highly sensitive and or neurodivergent. And I really believe this is true simply because it is essential for looking after your nervous system, if nothing else. There are plenty of other benefits too that help, but it really helps with your nervous system. And so when you're in that deep darkness of overwhelm, of sensory overwhelm, things like rhythmic movement, shaking movement. I kind of like to swing my arms from side to side, shake out my arms, my legs, and I actually keep that going for quite a while. I think the most recent time that this happened, and it was more of an emotional overwhelm at the time, but I could feel my senses, my sensory system was really kind of on high as well. I think I probably did this for about 10 minutes solid, just shaking it all out. And actually it kind of created kind of a fizzy sensation in my body. But it was only once I'd done that could I then start to downregulate. Swinging arms backwards and forwards. In my therapeutic courses, I talk about the wood chopper. So swinging the arms up, taking a breath in, and bringing them down quite vigorously, blowing out through the mouth, which then leads me to breath work. There's lots of breath work that can be helpful for that sensory overwhelm moment as well. Essentially, if you're unsure, be guided by your body. If what you're doing feels good, or at least feels neutral and doesn't feel like it's feeding that sensory overwhelm, then just keep going with it. Do it until you feel soothed. And then once you reach that point where it feels like the energy for that sensory overwhelm has kind of been expended and you've started to come down a little bit, follow it up with something that feels really good. So maybe that's taking a hot drink and just really focusing on that. A little hot chocolate maybe, if that's your tipple of choice. It's definitely one of mine. And yeah, just doing something really pleasurable for you, whatever that is, whatever is your go-to. It might be getting into a special interest, maybe listening to a certain piece of music, or I heard this one recently actually, listening to a podcast or an audiobook with someone whose voice is super soothing. I've got a couple that come to mind. Stephen Fry, definitely. Reading Harry Potter is definitely high on my list. Yeah, and actually one thing that I missed when you are deep in that sensory overload moment and you're perhaps going to your movement is maybe thinking about keeping movement low to the ground. Sometimes I just lie down on the ground, for example, and using your voice to voice. So some of the work that I do with people when we're working with the nervous system is breathing in, and then as you breathe out, really sounding the vowel sounds. And then it can from deep down in your belly. Okay, I think I've expended all of the information that I wanted to. As always, please let me know in the comments if you've used any of these, whether you try any of them, if there's anything you could add that you use. But yeah, let's support each other. And of course, if you like the video, give me a thumbs up. It really helps support the channel and reach other people that need this information. And consider subscribing if you want to join me for more information like this, some yoga sequences, meditations, and other vlogs a little bit like this too. All right, I hope you are well, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I hope to see you on the next video.